Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaza here. Monday of week 2 of the regular season for West Virginia football. Supposed to be looking ahead to the Duquesne Dukes. We'll talk about another team for Pennsylvania instead because Chris Anderson, not sure anybody really cares about this game Saturday very much unless they have a ticket. And even then, it might be kind of negligible. At least for today, most people will be more attuned to what happens Saturday night in Happy Valley. And we are here to do what we can, take some questions, provide some answers. Where sometimes we might not have any things that you were telling me and people had informed me about. I wasn't even aware. And I was there in the press box, swaying back and forth with 110,000 people and did not catch this or that. Haven't had a chance to rewatch it yet. Hope to get to that. But we'll do our best to try to answer questions because that's what we do on Mondays during the regular season.
That is what we do. And Mondays are going to be super busy, but that's why we're here. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to discuss. And I know the coaching staff is going to jump in and try to move forward to Duquesne later this afternoon. But right now, we got to talk a little bit more about this Penn State game. We do that.
Yeah, late night, Saturday night into Sunday morning. Some people catch the podcast. Some people sleep on the game, wake up, and move on. And then some people still have that interest, and maybe they don't have the time or the interest to go over the podcast again. So what do? We come back with another podcast, and we solicit questions on the VIP side of the message board, earsports.com. Go now, half off the subscription price. Special offer ends tomorrow. So a limited time offer here. We do things like this regularly. We do a lot of other stuff to cover this team, and it has us scratching our head. It has us asking questions, and as we'll get to here, has us answering questions because a lot of people watch, we're curious, want to know what was up Saturday night. And now, what do we think of the Mountaineers moving forward? Let's not belabor the point anymore, Chris. What do you say? You open the mailbox and retrieve us a couple of questions.
Sounds good. I will start with kind of a general question. We'll mash up a few of them, but essentially, multiple people asked after seeing WVU in action, do you change your perspective of this Mountaineer football team based off of what you saw on Saturday night?
How about this? Having watched other teams, have I changed my perspective of West Virginia?
Oh, well, you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead. That's the next question.
Okay. Because that's kind of hard for me to get past right now. It does not. I just don't have 8-win hopes for this team, and I thought 7 might be a stretch. I saw them getting 6. I saw them being 6-6, and it was going to be close on some things just by the way I kind of play things out and mess with point spreads and all that stuff. And I figured that was going to be about it. I figured there was about like a 3-touchdown difference between Penn State and West Virginia if things went according to plan. And I think Penn State maybe wanted to be sharper, and West Virginia certainly wanted to score more than 15 points, but it still ended up in that spot that most people predicted. The over under the point spread was right about what was prognosticated too. So my concerns that I had were there. The things that I thought could be better based on additions or just development. I think some of those showed up and came through on TV or on the field, but I don't think that it's going to make me say, yeah, I got that right. So therefore, everything is automatically going according to plan the rest of the way. And I also can't say this team stinks and they're not going to win 3 games because I didn't think they were that bad. They were overmatched and outmanned and just like not the best team on the field, which that's going to happen to a lot of teams when you're playing the number 7 team in the country. Still think they're going to be right around a 500 team and fighting for bowl eligibility late. But as we'll probably get to, I think that you could look around and say this maybe not as bad as how it looked Saturday night moving forward.
I'm with you. I think this game went how they got there. A couple little things were different than maybe I expected, but we sat on this podcast and discussed it, and I predicted here and on our Penn State sites podcast something along the lines of like 31-13 that I thought West Virginia might be able to break one play, get one touchdown in that might, kind of silence the crowd a little bit and get them a little bit worried early, but that the offense wouldn't be efficient enough and eventually defense would falter and Penn State would pull away. And that's almost exactly what happened. So my view of this West Virginia team has not changed that much because you're like, oh, so you thought their offense was going to stink and Secondary is going to be like, no, like I also think Penn State is good, very good. They are the defending Rose Bowl champions. They are number 7 team in the country, and a lot has to go right to kind of beat those teams. And I think Penn State has a little more talent on their team, and it showed. And so I don't think this changes my view of West Virginia much at all. I'm right there with you. I put my game by game predictions, broke it down this game, and said West Virginia would go 6-6. And so I'm still there. Maybe a tweak here or two because of the second part of this question, Mike. You ready for it now?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't even pronounce what this username is. But after seeing WVU and the rest of the Big 12 week 1, did your win-loss predictions go up or down? So here you go, Mike. Texas Tech, TCU. Who else? BYU looked terrible. And they won, but they looked terrible against Sam Houston State. Um, who else had a bad week?
Baylor.
Yes, Baylor.
So Baylor's the team that I could not get my head around whether that was West Virginia's 6th win, 6th loss, whatever. Is that the difference between 6-6 and 7-5? That's the one that I was really puzzled about because just again, the way that I look at things and the value I give stuff where I come up with like kind of a ranking on who's better by how much, it's pretty close. I just not quite a believer in the quarterback, and they made a lot of changes there. I'm not sure that it was so smooth in the beginning, but I'm also not sure they can't get back to where they want to go. The team's turned over a lot in the last couple of years, so it's not. And they won the conference 2 seasons ago, but I don't think that automatically played forward. But that's the one team that had my attention before the season and looked pretty bad yesterday, especially on defenses, which is what they tried to fix in the offseason. It makes me think. I just don't know that all of those things that didn't look great are going to naturally go West Virginia's way because I don't think West Virginia looked surprising in any form or fashion. We talked about they looked like what they looked like and what we thought they were going to look like. So if we're having this conversation about a Baylor, a BYU, a Texas Tech, a TCU, and how they might have surprised us a little bit, or maybe like they underperformed relative to expectations, the conversation about West Virginia is, well, the Mountaineers kind of are who we thought they were. So what does that say about them? Does that make them better than those 4 teams? It doesn't. I did not have them going 4-0 or 0-4 against them. I think they can beat BYU at home, but the Baylor game was the one that really made me think. But now I think what it does make me think is that, man, September was important before. It's even more important now. And whether it's fair or not, the narrative is going to be Neil Brown's 0-4 against Texas Tech, and this team just lost at Wyoming when it had a 17-point lead. West Virginia needs to win a road game in the Big 12 early in the schedule so it can actually have some stakes as the season goes along. And you're not just cleaning up on kind of empty road games in late November, as has been the pattern before. So, hey, win one on the road early on. Why not a TCU, a team that's had a big roster overhaul when you consider the quantity of talent that they lost, and also just lost to a vagabond team that is exciting and has some high level talent, but just for Colorado to do what it did on Saturday is kind of remarkable. When you think about like 80 transfers, that's crazy. And to lose that game is really wild. But I think you see that TCU has some quarterback and offensive issues and inefficiencies that they just don't feel very comfortable with right now. I think that makes September even more important for the program for Neil Brown. Like we knew it was going to be a grind, but now those games maybe take on some more value because those opponents look vulnerable and the wins look more gettable right now. Although I'm going to say it again, I don't think West Virginia has done anything to make you say, yeah, they should win those games now. I don't think they're there. I'm not sure they even get there before the kickoff of those games, but that's going to be the narrative that people craft, I'm sure.
So before the season, I said if Vegas were to set the line for every game for the entire year for the season for West Virginia, that you would have 3 games, one game where West Virginia was a definitive like 3-touchdown favorite or more, and that was Duquesne, and then 3 games where West Virginia would be more than a touchdown underdog at Penn State, at TCU, and at Oklahoma. Still might be a 8 or more point underdog at TCU. Partly because that's on the road. And like you said, like West Virginia didn't prove anything either in week 1, but everything else I'm imagining would be somewhere in that kind of touchdown or less range one way or the other. So it's a lot of kind of coin flip games here where West Virginia can win. So I don't know if it's changed my perspective that much. Like, I mean, maybe you can tweak it to half a game more because I did think Texas Tech would be good, like not world beater good, but fringe top 25 good. Um, Oklahoma looked, I mean, again, overmatched opponent, but they didn't even break a sweat.
Mm.
That was impressive. But let me give you a quick true or false, Mike. West Virginia must leave Houston with at least, or the next 5 games: Duquesne, Pitt, Texas Tech, at TCU, at Houston. West Virginia must go 3-2 or better.
For what? Like, what's the consequence? Like firing the coach because they're not going to do that in the season. I don't think.
Not, well, I don't want to go so far as fire the coach because I think the path I laid out for a midseason firing is like a lot worse than say 2-3 in the next 5. It's something drastically bad.
Yeah.
But
For bowl eligibility,
yeah, let's go there. So
I don't.
you have
I
to you
don't think so.
have to be 3-3 at the halfway point.
I don't. I think you could be 2-4 and get 4 in the back end. I think you can. It's not ideal at all, but like that's been the pattern again. Like that's been the pattern. They've done that before. They've gone 2-4 and 4-2, and they've rallied a couple times late in the season to get to 5 wins or 6 wins. It's not pretty and desirable, but like I just look at it and like the second half of schedule is just easier than I thought that it was going to be. You're looking at like the Cincinnati, Houston, BYU games. That's going to be 3 winnable games. Or I think I don't think there's any stretch of the imagination, especially when 2 of them are at home. So that's doable. I think so. I wouldn't write it off. But the problem is, and this is where things get that your question kind of evolves a little bit. Can you get 4 wins in the back end if you're not good enough to win 3 of those games that we're talking about? Because really, it's just 2. Like the Duquesne one, put that in the bank. So can they get 2 out of the Pitt, Texas Tech, TCU, Houston? And if there's not 2 there, then how are they going to find 4 somewhere else? Right? That's a good question there. I think it can happen. I just don't know that it will, or that anybody should assume that it can or will happen. So really good question. The answer is for me is that they can, but they would help themselves a whole lot. Obviously, if they got half of the bowl eligibility done in the upcoming stretch.
Next question comes from Clarence Over. Was there anything noticeably different about the offensive game plan? With the supposed new approach in the running game, nothing looked any different than what we've seen from Neil Brown thus far. Mike,
Well,
do you agree with that statement? Or if not, what was different?
at large, yeah, I'm sure that we can get under the hood. Or if you shared a Snapple with Neil Brown and watch a film, he would tell you some things that are different. They might have locked some things up in the offensive line different, changed blocking, changed, just assignments or how they gap stuff. Might have done that. That's very minute stuff that to the eye is not going to jump out. And that's what the question is here. Like, wait a minute, new offense. And the concept of new offense is massageable for sure. Because some people think, all right, they're gonna do something new, but it's still gonna be that air raid offense. They're just going to call the plays that draw upon the strengths of the offense more and maybe put some wrinkles in to do that. But I wonder if they felt good enough running some of the quote unquote new stuff, whether that's just like minor things or packages, something from, like I said, a minute thing to something more obvious. I wonder if they felt good doing that game one against the defense, but I also wonder, man, if not from 6 weeks of the summer and 6 weeks of preseason, 4 weeks preseason, if not for like those 10 weeks, when are you going to do it? Like if you're not ready, when are you going to do it? Because you're going to bust it out against Duquesne? No, because then you're ruining the surprise you might get against Pitt. So I think that might be a bit of a fallacy that they just didn't use their good stuff against Pitt, because if you didn't have it after all that runway to the regular season, you might not have it. So there certainly is some question there, but I think that they were going to run Neil Brown's offense. They were just going to actually hand the ball off more. Did they do any of that with some ingenuity and creativity? Very rarely, very rarely. Like you did not see a lot of formationing, shifting, and things like that. Option stuff, zone stuff, very very limited. I thought. Now, could they get outside? I don't know. Look, if they wanted to go north and south against that defense, that's fine. Inside zone, they could be good at that, even though their guard play wasn't great, especially in the run. But anything with like jet action that was supposed to like get the ball in the hands of playmakers, not really. The screens are the screens. We've seen them a lot. They rarely ever pop because of like, you don't have maybe potent receivers or great pass blockers outside. Um, so yeah, it's hard to give that an affirmative answer. Like what looked different? Very little. I don't think it was going to look different, but Never saw two backs, right? Didn't see tight ends doing crazy things. And then just look up like what Penn State did. Yeah, they had three running backs in the backfield sometimes. They had two tight ends in a diamond formation. They shifted that diamond formation outside to throw screens. And those are the small things, anecdotal things about, how you can turn one little idea into two or three. And there just wasn't any of that at West Virginia. And I'm not sure that they're advanced enough or talented enough offensively or with their game plan to just go out there and line up and be better at it. They're going to need some window dressing and some sleight of hand to do that. And I think that part you can say, man, that was kind of disappointing. Like, where was the creativity to liberate this offense? I don't think that really existed in the quantity that they wanted or needed.
Yeah, I didn't see much different. Like you said, the 12 personnel, I did not. I mean, I think I remember like one play where they tried to run like almost like a triple option type thing that got blown up. Um, the I'm trying to think about what the exact quote was from Neil Brown, but there was a point during fall camp where he was asked about the offense and changes and stuff, and he said, "We're not changing the offense. Like it's going to be the same offense." And I think that quote, I remember that that quote was part of the story, and it got put in, and fans lost it. And you're right, like there I'm sure he could find some tweaks and things like that, like you said, blocking scheme if he sat down and watched the film. But overall, from far away and you're watching it, it looked it looked the same. It looked like it had the same problems that this offense has had the last few years. It just looked like there was a quarterback who could make a little bit of something happen with his feet. And other than that, it was the same offense, which is not a good thing. And brings us to our next question from Duffy95. How can we be in year 5 and our offense still does not have an identity? First off, is it true or false that there is no identity? Second off, how can you be at this point and not have one if there is none?
Hmm. That's a good question. Identity is another one of those variables that it exists in extremes. Their identity is that they're kind of a loose construct of an air raid offense that's going to run the ball more out of it. This is I'd be really curious to kind of sit down and like if you could do this in some forensic way, but like that 2016 season where they went 10-2 and they ran the ball like crazy. If you overlap that with this season here, what it's going to look like, I wonder how similar the ideas and the execution would be because that was a team that could really run the ball, had good quarterback play, but like they had a mobile quarterback who could run, and they did some stuff out of the air raid, out of Holgerson's air raid. Remember, he was evicted from the club because they ran the ball so much and so well. And I wonder if this could be like that because that was a different offense, even though it was still Dana's air raid offense. And if you look at like what happened in Oklahoma State, when Dana went to Oklahoma State, all of a sudden Gundy's offense became Dana's offense. And then since Holgerson's left, they have brought in offensive coordinators and said, listen, you're going to just carry the clipboard and do what we were doing. You can put your twist on it, but their progression of offensive coordinators have pretty much done air raid stuff, and they've run the ball pretty well with like not all world running backs. They've had some guys get to the NFL for sure, but because that offense did it, like the offense did it for them. So there exists a way to do that, but is this a running air raid offense? No. And is it an air raid offense that lights you up with quarterback and receivers? It has not been. So what do we have here? Like it's not like fraudulent, but it's like a bit of a counterfeit air raid, which is not. I'm not saying that the identity is counterfeit air raid. Please don't do that. But it's just not this or that. And yeah, you like to be in your lane right now. Now, if they had the properly calibrated of JT Daniels for 1 year that got through 12 games and they went 7-5 or 8-4, who knows? Got to the 10 wins, right? And then he came back again this year. The offense is much more advanced, just much more advanced. Year 2 with him, some maybe upgrades in the receiver position. I think maybe some guys don't go pro because Daniels was good in 2022. Again, I'm projecting here, but that didn't happen. But if he was good in 22 and he came back, all of a sudden maybe this offense is a little bit more identifiable. But right now, yeah, you just kind of have in between the poles of what this offense is, and it's not balanced, right? So that's the other part about this. It's not a passing offense like an air raid is usually. It's not really a prolific run offense based on one game. I know that, and it's not a balanced offense right now. So what do we have? Don't know. The quarterback question, I can't answer. It's a failing. It's a failing, and they tried. Like his first move was to get Austin Kendall. His second move was to get Jared Dagey. And they primed Jared Dagey to be the quarterback because they thought they had a couple of years with him, and they did. It didn't work. They never pulled the trigger on replacing Dagey. They never put in Green. They went out and they got JT Daniels. That didn't work. And I felt like I was taking the crazy pills, but I bringing it up and people look at me like, what are you talking about? Why would they go get a quarterback from the portal? I don't know. Maybe because they need one. I wonder how much of a storyline that'll become as the season goes along. If it is, that's not a good thing for Brown and Green and Markio. If it's not, then yeah, then maybe I need to keep taking the crazy pills. But that is something I would keep an eye on for sure.
I mean, you and I have been saying every year when we talk about portal needs, quarterbacks on there. No matter what your quarterback situation is, quarterbacks on there. Has to be. Like, I mean, unless you're literally returning Heisman candidate with multiple years of eligibility remaining, quarterback needs to be on your transfer need list. Period. End of story. Back to the question about the identity. We're in year 5. You're right. Like, how do you not have an identity in year 5? And I think part of the answer you touched on it there. New quarterback almost every year, varying quarterbacks, different styles, different types of guys, bringing them in from different schools all over the country, but also 4 different offensive coordinators in 5 years
Bingo.
with multiple different play callers and some confusion about who's actually calling plays. Like, you can't build an identity like within a couple games. Like, you have to have some sort of consistency and kind of pick a lane and go with it. And at no point has that happened with this offense, whether it's the quarterback decisions, the offensive coordinator decisions, or who is even calling plays on those decisions. You can't build an identity out of just kind of indecision.
Like the Masked Singer is a cool concept. It could be a fun show, but sooner or later you're looking at your watch like, okay, who is it? Sooner or later you have to take the mask off and figure out who you are. That's the point of the program, right? And sooner or later you have to show the college football establishment who you are. That's the point. And if you don't get there, that's a problem.
Next question. GD full. Again, related to this, we're kind of stuck on offense right now, but that's where most of the questions came from. Bottom line, is the passing game actually as bad as it looked last night? What's your thoughts, hopes moving forward, Mike?
Well, I mean, last night it was as bad as it looked for sure. Now it's going to be better against Duquesne. I don't think that Pitt's going to have the capability in the back end, although they'll be well coached for sure, and they'll have players back there. That'll be a good secondary, but I don't think the Texas Tech secondary is going to be great. I don't know the TCU secondary is going to be great based on what I saw in the first week, but also what I suspected was true. I looked at depth charts and what they lost and what they returned. So there's a chance for it to grow and get better, but it also has to. If you're missing open receivers, if you won't throw it in the middle of the field, if instead of stepping up in the pocket to really just, I mean, to sometimes just bite down in your mouthpiece and risk a hit because you got to throw one across the middle, then if you're rolling out and you're adding time to the play, you're kind of throwing the whole time in the offense up. Just things like that. Everybody understands that when they watch it. I don't want to ramble. It's got to get better. It does, but it can. But they're going to have to make it work with him. They're going to have to figure out, okay, he can't do A, B, and C. We're going to have to find out L, M, and N. Not X, Y, Z, right? Because that's the other end of it. You don't want to get too far away from the point. So if you can't do A, B, and C, get L, M, N. Find a way to be like a little bit closer to where you want to be and not the opposite. That exists with Green. You just got to find it. So if he's checking down or throwing quick stuff, if the screen game works, if he can hit the tight end, on the hashes, that's fine. But he's also going to have to exist up the rail 20, 30 yards down the field. He's going to have to throw it in between the hashes in the middle because defense will scheme around you. They'll take away the stuff that you're going to settle for because they'll make it. So it's going to have to be better. The troublesome thing, and I went over this, is I really wonder about how athletic and how fast the receivers are. And I really wonder, where was Rodney Gallagher and where can he be and how quickly can he get there? And then Jay Sean Pope, Noah Massey, and EJ Horton didn't play. That's 3 transfers. Horton was injured, street clothes. Massey was not even on the dress list, so he might be injured. Don't know. They don't tell us these things. Pope, I believe, travel just didn't play. You overhauled receiver and you went out and you got guys because you thought you needed to or you had to, and 3 of them didn't play. and a freshman played one snap, maybe. We're not even sure about that. That's tough. Like that's got to get better, but we'll have the answer here soon. And if they didn't hit on the transfers, that's going to underscore the answer. If their receivers aren't contributing or dressing or playing or scoring or getting passes, then this offense is going to have a hard time evolving, and the pass game is going to be as bad as it looked.
Dude, this was just a kind of a combination of a lot of negatives here. Some pretty poor receiver play and like not being able to get open. I mean, and then sometimes when they did get open, Green missed them on the throws. And then Penn State knew that passing game was struggling, and they just brought guys, a lot of guys. It was almost like run blitz kind of stuff. Like they're filling gaps and coming in. If they see it's a pass, then they're continuing their pursuit of the quarterback, and it caused some issues for West Virginia. No doubt about it. So I think this was not a great matchup. Period. Not a great matchup against their secondary either, because we talked about it on the pregame. Like they lost essentially a first round pick. He was pick number 32. The Dolphins had to forfeit their pick, so there should normally be 32 picks in the first round, but he was first in the second. Um, and then just kind of still had guys all around the secondary that are likely to be in the NFL one day. And Johnny Dixon was somebody you brought up. I mentioned Kalen King, and you were like, "Hey, Johnny Dixon's pretty darn good too." And then their safeties played well, so it was a tough matchup, and I'm not sure what to take from it as far as the passing game goes. And I'm not sure we're going to figure anything out, this week either against Duquesne. I think maybe you get to Pitt or Texas Tech or even TCU before you try to figure something out. And then again, TCU but gave up 4 100-yard receivers in one game, so maybe maybe
500-yard
that's
passer.
yeah. So maybe that's the guy they need. That's the team they should have opened up the season against. But
Yep.
rough go for that offense, and I'm not completely out on the passing game, but it didn't look great. Not great at all. Um, go to the other side of the ball. Let's start with a pretty, what should be a straightforward one, but is obviously not. From VT Hater, what is going on with Spells? Speaking of cornerback Jacoby Spells. Mike, do you want to recap our discussion and trying to figure out what's going on here?
Well, I knew he was on the dress list, and I saw him. I didn't see him for like a large part of the game, but they started their 2 and they brought in 2, and like they kind of hinted they were only going to play 4, and I think a lot of people thought maybe Malachi Ruffin would be the 5th one out. They talked up Spells and said he'd been good, so you figure, man, is he going to start? We kind of thought Bishop would, and then all right, they brought in Miller. I thought Miller would start, but no, they brought in Andrew Wilson-Lamp, who maybe had a good camp, didn't have a great game, but they played those 2 most of the game. I think Ruffin and Montre Miller got maybe like between them like individually 12 or 15 snaps apiece. And I just kind of thought that's the way it was going. That wasn't a fast-paced game. They were not great, but they weren't getting gassed at cornerback. Didn't think that they had to like change things up very well. So 4 seemed fine, 2 starters, 2 backups, and it just seemed like Spells is the odd man out. But I thought he played. In fact, when I was on my way down to the field, his name was called out for making a tackle. Want to say it was on the drive right after the onside kick. I believe that's when I went down to the field. And I was with somebody from WVU, and the person said, all right, got to put Spells in the participation report. We went over like that sequence. He doesn't make a tackle, so he might have been misannounced, and he's not in the participation report. Could simply be that he didn't play. Could be that he was injured. Look, there's a lot of guys who didn't dress, didn't travel, or just did travel, didn't dress, or did travel, did dress, and didn't play. We don't know. We'll have to follow up on that. But, Spells, Horton, Polk, guys like that, like what happened? What's the prognosis? That's just the preseason's petty. Coaches don't like to tell stuff, and they're gonna establish themselves early on, and like they're gonna kind of dare you to ask questions about injuries, and they're gonna say, well, we're not doing it because they're not doing it, and that's kind of the way it goes. But if that's a guy who's not playing because whatever reason not related to health, let's say, that's a concern because he's certainly talented, and they had high hopes for him as a sophomore. They were talking him up not that long ago, saying that he'd really had a good camp and he's making splashy plays. To go from 5 to 4 and have no backups beyond the backups, you really kind of like limit the competition there. And this is going to be a rolling thing where like not one of those 4 or 5 is good enough to just take that spot and be the guy all year. You're going to have to have people pushing each other. But again, if your positions struggle and your depth isn't good enough to push the positions, if you have problems on the field and the problem is that your problems are on the field, that's a failing. And every time you lose somebody who can solve that problem, it becomes a little bit more exaggerated.
I'm looking here. You're right. Four four cornerbacks played according to Pro Football Focus. And again, the participation chart checked it. Spells is not on there. Only four corners played, and yeah, Bishop and where are we going? Where was that? And Wilson Lamp, 60 and 46 snaps. Ruffin and Miller, 12 snaps apiece. So
Yep.
it kind of seems like a pretty clear delineation of who the starters are. And unless Spells was injured, he might be the fifth man. We won't know. And this afternoon, I get to talk to coaches and players and head coaches and coordinators, and maybe we'll get answers there. But until then, we don't know. I got a related question for you, Mike,
Hmm.
because I believe I already know the answer, but you've been doing this even longer than I have. First time, no depth chart ever?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Like, because I was gonna say it. I mean, because it used to be normal to just release the depth chart, and then I remember, a few years ago, it was kind of like not really avoided, but just kind of like thrown in with the game notes on Monday, and it was released on Monday. But it was kind of with that, hey, like that's just game notes. Don't, it's not the end all be all. And then I believe it was last year's season opener against Pitt where it did not come out with the game notes, but then came the next morning, I believe, so that Neil Brown could talk about it with his Tuesday press conference. This time, nothing, not a hint of any depth chart at any point for the game. That's
Yeah, that's a lot
Just
of
wanted to check because I can't remember it. This is literally the first time I can remember it never happening.
it's a lot of
So
things. I don't know what to say. Like I'm not gonna. It's you can editorialize me all you want. You can fill in the blanks, put words in my mouth. It's probably gonna be pretty accurate. But what you think I think about it. But like if you sat down the coaching staffs for West Virginia and said, "Can you give me the two deep for Penn State's offense and defense?" It would have been pretty darn accurate. And the other way around too. I don't know I don't know what it is, but I think we could probably assume that these probably aren't the friendliest coaching staffs. They go against each other a bunch in recruiting, and they're on the field back to back years. There's probably some sort of a dynamic in the relationship there between those two. And like, if one's not going to put the depth chart out because it doesn't want to or doesn't have to, the other one's going to kind of do the exact same. It's kind of a disservice to a lot of people, but they really don't care.
what was the accuracy, I think, on the two deep? I think I had
Yeah, where was
Hubbard
the
and you
surprise?
you
Like, where
told
was
me
the
you told me Yates. Yeah, I think we were like 21 to 22 or
Mhm.
something like that. And
like
I'm sure Penn State has even better information.
yeah, well, because they were at the practices when West Virginia opened the doors, right? Ridiculous. So like, where did Neil Brown go? Oh man, they got us. Didn't see that guy coming. Didn't think he'd be. I didn't. We didn't have him in the two deep. Geesh. And like, where did Manny Diaz go? Oh man, Brandon Yates. Huh? Never saw that coming. Like, what are we doing? Right? It's just
And I checked the Penn State one too, the projections from our Penn State site. They were 20 of 22, 21 of 22, something like that as well. So
and the
like
backup
you
started
can't,
or like they just got the wrong or, which again that happens. Like,
yeah, it wasn't a mystery. There was no surprises as far as personnel
congratulations,
basis.
everybody. Congratulations, you did it. Hooray!
Oh goodness. All right, I'm looking back through a lot of questions about these two back sets. A lot of people upset about, not seeing two back sets.
I think you needed two tight ends in the field as often as you could, just to block it a little better. Whether that was Nick Malone playing tight end or Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis playing tight end, but you take a tight end off the field and you put a running back there, you move the eyes closer to the backfield and you make it a little bit harder to run block. I would think that's probably it. Um, but I'll also allow like you really kind of have to listen to these people talk and forget like half of it in the preseason because how much of it's going to come true. So that could be. I mean, look, if they're hiding their depth charts, who knows like what they're feeding the other side to get them ready for something that might not exist too. So, hey, conceptually it sounds awesome. Realistically, you might not see it. Don't know what to tell you there. Like it makes a lot of sense when you talk about it and you have them kind of rubbing their hands together, talking about how cool it'd be to have a 20 personnel or whatever, 21 personnel, but didn't follow through. And it could be personnel, but could just be like sleight of hand by the manipulators of the information too.
I got one more 1 minute question for you because I hate this question, but two people asked it and they got me thinking about it. Again, I hate this question. I have to. Replay Penn State game with Green as the Penn State quarterback and Alar as WVU's QB. Would the score be the same?
Yeah, were you blown away by Penn State's position talent or skill position talent?
Yeah, I mean, I knew Lambert was good. Lambert Smith, I think he goes by now.
Mhm.
But and the running backs, I think West Virginia did a nice job bottling them up. And they got guys who were very highly rated as recruits and such. So like it didn't surprise me that they could do it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just don't know if the whole game's flipping if you swap the QBs.
No, probably not, because you still have the defense in blue, and probably going to give Aller trouble. So that's interesting. It's a really cool question, but you're asking. Hmm, I think it's interesting. I think that Aller lifts up the receiver play a little bit. I think it connects on some of the throws and maybe makes some of the throws, not actually like completes the passes, but triggers it where Green ran a little bit. And I think that just getting the ball in play sometimes is really good. Like how many times did Aller hit a receiver on a crossing route or a post or a slant or something like that, and then lots of yards after the catch? That's good. But so like sometimes just putting the ball in play is a big deal, and Aller seems to excel at that. Even when he got the ball out of his hands when he was under pressure, that still is better than a sack. Obviously, an incomplete pass is fine, but like he put the ball in play, which is really good. And at one point, he was sitting on 20 completions and 300 yards. That's really good. And just that last touchdown pass, that wasn't a long pass, but he put the ball in play and the guy made some plays and got some blocks. And West Virginia looked a little bit indifferent defensively at the end of the day. So, but the ball was in play. And Green, that's not his strength right now, but sometimes he is the ball in play where he moves around and runs. So I don't know that he could operate the Penn State offense, but I also don't know that like Aller was so within, he wasn't coloring in the lines. Like he was outside the pocket sometimes, and sometimes he just got rid of the ball and helped himself. So that's good. He was like a middle of the pack quarterback in preseason Big Ten quarterback rankings I saw. I really wonder if he's up, in the top 2 or 3 by the end of the season here with his stats and his performance. Because I'm not saying there's quarterback questions at Ohio State or Michigan, but like those teams are probably going to run the ball or get by with okay quarterback play. But um, the same may be true of Penn State because they're running backs, but he looks like a difference maker at that position. And I think you'd have a really hard time saying that Green is, a top tier quarterback in the Big 12 right now, but got a lot of time to grow into it as well.
Yeah, I think, again, before the game, we said, hey, he's a very highly rated quarterback, a lot of potential, but he hasn't done it yet. He looked excellent on Saturday night. Very, very, very good. So he's fulfilled that potential for one game so far and has a pretty high ceiling. But West Virginia can't kind of dwell on that too much because they're going to face some good quarterbacks, especially later in the season. So they need to shore that up and try not to make everybody look like Drew Aller.
Well, high ceiling on the website today. Mondays are going to be huge. It starts, well, I shouldn't say it starts, but it gets rolling, I guess, a little bit further now with our Q&A podcast. We'll have text from game day. We'll have the week 1 answers that need week 2 questions. Neil Brown, coordinators, players at a news conference today as we look back a little bit at Penn State, probably a lot because no one really wants to look forward to Duquesne, but plenty going on and plenty of incentive, as I said, to sign up 50% off the subscription price. Chris, content with this first week? Excited for the second?
Well, let's keep it moving.
Right toward the finish until next time. I am Mike Kazaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you then.